We'll give it about 2 more minutes and then we're going to get started. The way I like to run these workshops is interactive. Okay, so I don't want it to just be an hour of me talking at you, monologue style. I want us to have a conversation as much as we can. And so please feel free to keep your video on, microphone engaged, and chime in. If you have a question, raise your hand, or just, you can take a moment and as I'm going between slides, you're welcome to interrupt me, ask me a question if you'd like, because I want this to be something that's very useful for you, and I want it to be as, I can't tailor everything specifically to each company because every company is a little bit different, but I can certainly take some of these concepts that we're talking about and I can frame them for your specific situation if you have one and you want to explain it to the group and I can give you some advice. We're going to have a lot of fun today talking about how to convert what you're doing at your company, your milestones, your achievements, and how to turn that into media coverage because it's not automatic and it's not as easy as some people might think it is. My name's Lisa Ann Pinkerton, and I'm the founder of Technica Communications. Before that, I was an award-winning environmental science reporter for NPR and PBS. So the work that we do here at Technica is really, it's providing PR services from the lens or through the lens of a journalist perspective. And humbly, we think that does make us more effective or efficient at the work that we do. I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Caitlin Cavanis and Jenna Landgraf. They're going to be my production team for you today. So they'll help me with certain questions or if people are raising their hands. They'll also be placing a couple of links in the chat as we go through to make this an interactive experience. All right. Looks like we have a quorum. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started, and I'm sure more people will jump in. My first question for everybody is, how did you find this event? There's a famous saying that I know 50% of my marketing works, I just don't know what 50%. And so I would be remiss if I didn't ask you specifically how you learned about this event. So if you could please take a moment and put it in the chat there. If you saw a LinkedIn ad or if you got a personal invitation from someone, somebody referred you to us, whatever the case might be, that could be really useful for us as we continue to do these programs. And also feel free to put your LinkedIn profile in the chat as well, and then you can connect with each other offline. This can also be a networking experience for you all as well. I want you to all get as much value from this as possible. I'm going to just take a quick look at the chat and see what we've got going on here. LinkedIn connection. All right, my LinkedIn post. Thanks, Jennifer. Very cool. All right. Can you, just as a logistics question, I've got the chat window up here. So can you see my chat window in this in on the screen?
No.
No. Okay, very cool. All right, that's good to know. Thank you. All right. What we're going to cover today is a little bit about the comparisons and pros and cons around just doing some LinkedIn activities versus a press announcement, understanding what news value is, and then also the bring your own customer media model. Before we get to that, what are some of the current challenges that you all are experiencing when it comes to public relations? You can feel free to put something in the chat, or you can speak up and share with the group here. Has everybody, like, just a raise of hands, like, has everybody put out a press announcement about their company in the past? Raise your hand if you've done that. Okay, Noel, how did that go for you? What was your experience?
Press announcement. We completed a Series A. So we had a press release and social media posts, as well as we reached out to several startup clean tech reporters to cover the story and where we were going with the Series A.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Did that, go ahead.
it went quite well. We got several articles through various reporters, national, local, and the press release went out, and our social media did relatively well comparably to our just general posts. Yeah.
Good. Good. Yeah, you had the benefit of having some very strong hard news, as we will talk about later on in the presentation, and that's I'm not surprised that you got that kind of response. So congratulations. How about anybody else on the call? James, Roman, Alex,
Mm.
what's been your experience?
Yeah. So I worked for Origin Materials for quite a while, and we had a very good, Origin still has, I'm no longer with Origin, a very good, very active PR person. And for a while, it was like one a week, right? Finding different things. And I guess the challenge is on a startup is continuing to find those interesting, some are newsworthy, some are not, items to keep the buzz going. I guess when you're raising money, it's interesting that people need to know, you need to feel a part of your mission.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We will talk about what some of those can be in this presentation. So I'm glad I'll be able to address that query for you. Anybody else want to share anything before we move on? And welcome, Sabatha. I hope I'm saying that. I hope I'm not slaughtering your first name too terribly. But welcome,
Hi, thanks. This is Sabata. Yes.
Sabatha. Good to have you. Okay, so this workshop that we're doing today is actually part of a series. So if you are not already aware, the first one we did was about how to message the work that you're doing at your company for a focus on customers and therefore um, you're priming your sales pipeline. And so we're going to do a little bit of a quick overview on that in this presentation, but also you can watch that first workshop. You can go to the link that Jenna just placed in the chat there. Go ahead and click on that and pull it up in your browser and save it for later. And we go quite in depth around how to make sure that your messaging is really focused on powering your sales. Because if you haven't recognized it already, I'm here to tell you doing cool shit is not enough. This is not a meritocracy. No one is going to notice the work that you're doing with your startup and how interesting it is on their own. And you're certainly not going to get the customers, partners, and investors that you need to grow just by building your technology. It it is it requires taking that technology, obviously marketing it, messaging it, and obviously going out there and getting your sales and doing that hard work of business development. And your PR program can be a type of sales enablement tool for you so that it's less a drain on your resources and more of a revenue generator. And that's how we frame the work that we do with our clients here at Technica. And that's why I'm doing the series of workshops to help dispel some of these myths. So something we covered in the previous workshop, which I'll touch base on a little bit here because it's relevant to today's workshop, is that a lot of people think the customer journey is just an automatic straight line and the customer naturally goes from awareness, consideration, retention, and I'm seeing that these little other items didn't populate today, so I'll have to fix those. This is validation and loyalty is number 5. And it'd be great if customers naturally went through this process on their own, but they don't. The customer journey is really more of this circuitous route, almost like the wandering of a river, taking the the path of least resistance, as it were. And from a public relations standpoint, what we're focused on is building awareness and credibility and validity and deliverability and trustworthiness to help the customers move through these states. And they can get distracted by competitors, or they can get confused on your offering if it's not clear enough, or they might not quite understand how to use what your solution is for their particular problem, or they just might get overwhelmed with all the information and not and have with analysis paralysis. So what your messaging does, and then an extension, your PR program, which gets those messages out into the world, keeps your company really close. It keeps the customers close to the company as it goes through these points. So you can kind of think of your PR program like a GPS system that keeps your buyers navigating towards your solution. And so once you've got that message, obviously you want to disseminate it into the market. And these are some of the places where you would put it. And we're going to talk about news coverage today. We talked a little bit about what your press release task was. I'm not going to belabor the point unless anybody else has anything that they'd like to share before we move forward, or a question. Okay, moving on. Wanted to chat quickly about using LinkedIn posts for news announcements compared to press releases. A lot of people think that, the people that they're looking to connect with, everybody's on LinkedIn anyway, so I don't need to go through the extra effort of getting media coverage per se, because ultimately I just need to talk to people. In actuality, your community is not as big as you think, and part of the job of a company, especially if it's at an early stage, is to continue to build that community and build that network. We're never finished building your network. And that is a principal reason why you want to get your happenings about your company into the media and out there into the world, so you can connect with new audiences, new people who don't know you yet. Frankly, I think a lot of people don't actually understand how the LinkedIn algorithm works. And there are some very specific traction markers that a post has to get within the first couple of hours for it to be shown to your full network, or to be on anybody's feed organically. And if you don't reach those levels, that post just kind of falls away. It has a very limited life. So if that's your only outlet for disseminating the milestone achievements of your company, a significant limitation to your ability to get the news out there. Any post that you put out is going to be self-promotional, and so anybody who's reading it is always going to take it with a grain of salt. And then it doesn't have that validation from an industry representative, such as a reporter or a news outlet, that is coming from a neutral place with expertise to evaluate and judge the company on its merits. Now, there are some pros. I will say LinkedIn is very useful, especially if you are an early stage company and you don't have a lot of hard news yet to promote to press. And we're going to talk about what hard news is in a minute. And and so it gives you an opportunity to demonstrate traction as it's happening. Allows you to add some personal touch or emotion to the news, and help make what you're doing emotionally sticky for your community and help them buy in more to what you're doing. Obviously, it gives you an opportunity to congratulate others and tag them, and that's going to help the algorithm. And if you're a company that's pre-validation stage, then you do have a good ability to build some brand awareness and credibility. All of this is most successful when you are getting third parties to post about you and less posting about yourself. And that's going to be a theme that's going to run through the entire workshop today, is that the ability to gain the traction you're looking for and demonstrate validity and credibility for the work that you're doing, which is going to then help you get customers, investors, strategic partners, etc. It's all about don't take my word for it, right? Listen to these people. It's the third party validation that is popular, is what people are looking for, and is going to be the best way to promote the work you're doing. Any questions before I move on? No? Okay. So I said we're going to talk about news value, and here we go. So, first thing to understanding news value is understanding how the media landscape operates. Now, I've created this as an illustration based on my experience being a reporter, and it's continual work in progress. So if you have any thoughts around how this could be improved, I deeply want to know. This is my attempt at explaining how the news industry works, and I see it kind of like a vortex. When you are launching as a company, you start out at this top position, number four. And if you can imagine this is like a whirlpool in an ocean, imagine the media floating in a boat on the surface of the water. Okay. And they can see into the whirlpool, but not very deep. Okay. So when you start out at a launch position, you're new, you're novel, you're groundbreaking, you're happening. And that is what reporters cover. That's what they're looking for, the new stuff. And so you're in a prime position. But then as the vortex or whirlpool continues to move, you're going to get pulled down to the bottom. And this happens just through the function of time, okay? Because it's about what's happening today. And frankly, a lot of companies think they can post big news on a Thursday and expect a reporter to cover it indefinitely for the next couple of weeks. It doesn't work that way. There's every week is a new news cycle. If your news goes out on a Thursday and you're expecting a reporter to cover it on Monday, they're going to come back to you and say, this is old news. This happened last week. What's happening this week? Everything's very timely for a reporter. So as time goes on, you're going to get pulled down. And if you don't do anything, you don't put out any more announcements, you don't ensure that you're keeping up your brand momentum with different types of mentions in the media over time, you're going to fall down to that number one position, which is a weak brand position. And when you do have a piece of news that's novel and unique, it will naturally bump you up to the top again. But if you're down here, you have much further to travel to get to the top where the media can see you. So that's why we focus the work we do to help our companies stay in a strong brand position, which is about, in the middle of the vortex here. This means when you do have something that's new and relevant and you move back up to the top level, you don't have as far to travel. Then there's media darling status, which is sort of this mid, between the top level and the midsection. And this is a status that happens when you are the front runner in your segment. You have incredible breaking news over and over and over, and you start to become a media resource beyond the incredible brand that you've built. You are providing insights to reporters on other pieces of news. And the media darling status is almost like you become a news beat in and of yourself. So Tesla, they have reporters at Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal. Their only job is to cover Tesla. And the same thing can be said of other big companies. The challenge with being a media darling is that what is that reporters are still looking to cover the new, unique, relevant, novel, and groundbreaking news. So if you're in that media darling status too long, well, somebody's going to start to get a bit investigative on you and try to find something that's going to take you down because you've been up there too long. This happened with Uber, happened with Elon Musk, and plenty of others, Jeff Bezos. Everybody. Once you're in this high echelon for a long enough period of time, the media will push you down because that's what's new about you. So the more high value news you can create, the more momentum you can give yourself to reach back up to that top level position. I know this is a lot of information. So does anybody have any questions?
Yes, this is Sabatya here. I've got a question, please. With this media positioning, if you're like I'll say a small to medium company. Um, let's say you're not at the early letters of the alphabet in terms of any series raising, even small to medium
Uh-huh.
company. Um, from my perspective in sub-Saharan Africa or South Africa, we have a lot of multinational companies that take up the online media space. So what would a small company do to gain online media space? Should we just be looking to buy online ad space? Should we looking to like be a darling in a way or partner? Should we like, yeah, what should someone be thinking of there?
It's a
Yeah,
great
because
question.
I mean, you might not really just compete on just a dollar for dollar basis to try out, but have more budget for them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question, and we're going to cover how to do that in this workshop later on. My point to you would be you don't want to buy ad space to compete. You still want to gain earned coverage, and you'll start small. Every company starts small until you get to a place where you've got some significant customers and some results to go along with it, or maybe there's a big brand that's decided to partner with you, or you got some investment. All of this is third party validation that then tells the reporter it's this company's worth my time. And it might start with a trade publication saying you're worth their time, and they'll do some stories, and then the mainstream folks will see that you got some trade coverage, and that'll help educate them on what you're doing and also validate the work you're doing, and to allocating their own time to it. And so it's about doing the hard work of building your company and then being diligent about promoting that in the press, and how you frame that for press is really critical. So in our first messaging workshop, we talked about a problem set, which is pain plus problem equals profit. Now you could also flip that to say, um, uh, uh, I'm not going to go there. So that's the equation. So if you can identify what pain you're alleviating for your customers and the problem, you will be able to make profit from it. And then that's a good story that reporters will cover. But if you cannot talk about what the results are that you are delivering to your customers and what they're getting from the work that you do, then it's what you're putting out there is more marketing speak, and it's not media coverage worthy. Does that make sense?
Mm, mm, great.
It's not about the features and benefits of what you're doing. It's leveling up that message to talk about what are the results the customers are getting and what do they say about it. When you can
Mm,
do that piece, then you start to look very interesting to a reporter because now you're
mm,
happening, right? And it's not just you saying these things; it's other people. Another way to put it is think about Apple, and see, they don't say we make great computers and they are user friendly and simple to use, and they're beautifully designed, because uh, computers are not usually designed for the layman, right? They don't go in that order. They reverse it. They say computers are too complicated and the average person struggles to use them.
mm,
We build a user interface and our computers are beautifully designed. They go from the opposite direction. Does that make sense?
I like it. Yeah.
Start with your problem first, social problem, and how you're solving it. That's going to make you more relevant to a reporter.
Mm, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, speaking of being relevant, hard news versus soft news. This is very important for all of you to understand as you're building your companies, because I can't tell you how many PR people over the decades have beat their head against a wall trying to help their clients understand the difference between hard news and soft news. And it's critical if you're wanting to get media coverage. Hard news is happening now. It's timely, it's urgent, it's factual, it has numbers. It leads in a new direction. It provides leadership and it impacts people and markets. So this is everyone's job from the company and the PR team. This is your messaging for every piece of news that you want to put out. You want to answer these items and try to make your announcement as hard as possible in terms of hard news, not hard in terms of like doing it, but firm, hard news. So think of like a tornado goes through a town, it kills a person. That's hard news. Timely, it's urgent, it's happening now. Factual. It might lead in a new direction if we start talking about how Tornado Alley in the United States is slightly shifting east, and it's not necessarily always Nebraska, Kansas, and Iowa anymore. More tornadoes are starting to happen in Alabama and Mississippi, and also other Oklahoma is the one that I'm referencing today. Impact people definitely. Okay, that's hard news. From a startup perspective, here are some examples of hard news. Back to the earlier question that was posed at the beginning of the workshop. Technology validation, number one. So that's funding. Why is funding a technology validation? Investors have done their due diligence on you. Experts in the field have decided to put their money into your company. Third-party research, reports, testing, data, all of this is validating your work. Case study results, also customers being willing to be public about the results that they're getting from using your technology or solution. Market traction. So you're getting new customers, people are buying what you're selling. Strategic partners. Again, people are vetting you and deciding, hey, this is a cool company. We want to work with them. We're going to partner. Maybe you sold a nice round number of units. The 1,000th unit, Enphase, if you all remember, if you all know Enphase, big publicly traded company now, wasn't always big and publicly traded. In fact, there were some very lean years over there where people weren't exactly sure if that company was going to survive. A friend of mine, Christine Bennett, managed their global comms. And when they sold their 1,000th unit, or maybe it was their millionth unit, Jenna, we should actually make a note to confirm what that number was. They gold plated it, put it on a roof somewhere, and made a big stink about it. And they got a lot of coverage for it because it was an achievement in and of itself that harkened a new era for the company. And then innovation. Innovation is hard news when you're providing leadership in your market or sector. So you're pushing the whole industry forward by developing a new type of product, or the product you're presenting to the market or the service, whatever the case might be, opens up new markets for the industry for others to come in and do something similar. Back in the day when we represented eMotorworks, they were able to connect all of their chargers in a way that they could say they had basically a virtual battery and a certain amount of capacity that the grid through the ISO could could leverage in terms of demand response. That was part of one of their big value propositions. So we put together an infographic and put out a press announcement because nobody had really talked about this concept of a virtual battery before. Now we have virtual power plants, companies like Swell Energy, another technical client. This is a very common nomenclature, right? But back in the day, 2015, the concept was brand new. So when eMotorworks put that information out there through some creative work that we did, then this created a whole new category, a new concept that now has become commonplace. So that's what made it new and novel and relevant, and also pushed the whole industry in a new direction. Any questions? The inverse of hard news is soft news. And that can be stuff that's evergreen, so there's no timely news hook to it. It's conceptual, it might happen in the future. It has low impact to a market, self-promotional or self-serving for the company, or it obscures or avoids the fact. So when press announcements are put out with some of these features, we consider them to have low news value and therefore low reporter interest value. Now, you can certainly do things to your news announcement to increase its news value, and that would be going back to this list of what high news value is. And so sometimes we'll encourage our clients to go back to their third party representative and ask again if we could use some numbers. And it doesn't have to be an exact number. Let's do a range. Let's do a percentage and up to this number. You're saving up to 60% energy costs or up to 30% reduction in carbon emissions or whatever the case might be. It's just something that's factual that gives it more teeth. Some examples of soft news that companies typically put out there: new hires, board members, new advisors. Maybe you won an award, you're speaking at a conference, you're exhibiting. Maybe you have done a press announcement like the roundup of the whole activity of the year, but there's actually not any new stuff in there. It's all previously announced stuff. Maybe your next generation product is ready to go, but there's just slight improvements. There's nothing really novel or unique about what's been changed. Or you have vague information. You put out a press announcement, but you can't name your customer, or you're not naming the location that your project's in. We've had some clients over the years want to put out an announcement about a partial funding close and hoping that that kind of coverage would then help them close the round. Very logical, strategically, from a business perspective. But from a reporter's perspective, this is a piece of news that's actually happening in the future. Yes, you closed $5 million, right? But it's under 10, and Bloomberg actually only looks at like under 15 million now. So if your raise is under 15 million, and the work that you're doing is a bit more common, like there's other companies out there already doing this stuff, it's not novel, unique, or groundbreaking, then they're not going to cover you. So um, So you're going out to reporters with a partial funding close, the lower number than what you might have in a couple of months when you close the whole round. You're telling reporters that you're not finished, right? And so you might get some covering the first part, but not the second part. You might have some folks say, "I'll wait for the second part," but then not cover it at all. And so you want to go out with your strongest position, and a partial funding close is not strong. Or low metrics or stats that aren't relevant, or ones that are just not measuring up to the level that others might see in the industry. And a lot of that stuff can just be reworked or tweaked based on messaging. Any questions? Okay.
Yes,
So,
a question.
yeah, go ahead.
This is about again. Yeah, got a question. With the soft news, does soft news go as far as, oh no, maybe ask differently. Is there a value in, if you have like extra stats, is there a value in sale of this extra stats? Is there a business in that? So maybe other parts of your business might not work as your SME, but maybe you can sell to a research firm. Like, is there a value in those extra stats that you're referring to? Is there a business in that extra stats?
Certainly, if you can find a buyer for those extra stats and you want to sell those, I think that's a great idea. And then if that person is willing to talk about the fact that they bought them from you, then that's a hard news press announcement. But if they're not, but you still want to talk about, hey, we sold some of our stats, but we can't name our customer, then then the information there is a bit vague. So it would be more of a soft news announcement.
Okay.
But sometimes some of this information is still very important to get out into the world because it helps you build your community and it helps you keep your community informed on what's happening, your stakeholders and the people that are watching you. So I'm not saying not to ever put out announcements about a new hire or a new board member, an award you won, or anything like that. It's just a matter of, are you going to bother reporters with that information? I would say do not bother them because they're not going to cover it. You want to build a rapport with reporters where you're going to them when you know you've got something good that they want, something of value that you can take to them and get news coverage for. So you can put the stuff on your website, do a blog about it, put it on LinkedIn, all that stuff's great. But you might not want to waste the effort of putting out a press announcement and hassling reporters to cover it. Because when you do that, you're just demonstrating to the reporter that you don't understand what they're looking for and what they need. Because remember, a reporter doesn't always make the decisions on their own. They have to sell it to an editor. I can't tell you how many stories I was excited about as a reporter that I could not get past my editor. That's part of one of the reasons I went into PR. Okay.
So quick question. Does it work if you also, I guess, provide some benefit, like you write for a particular journal? I remember way back I was in biofuels, and I knew some of the folks in the different magazines, and they're always hungry for content, and I could write back then. I've gotten old, so you know, if I wrote an article every couple of months for their magazine, they were more than happy to do independent covers for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's
Yeah.
common or it just happened to, they were my buddies also, so it worked. I don't know how.
Well, I mean, that's basically what you're doing is, yeah, you building relationships with these outlets and these reporters and editors, demonstrating your own subject matter expertise, that when you did have a piece of news for them, they could trust you that it was going to be valid and accurate because you've already developed that rapport with him and demonstrated that characteristic about yourself in another way. I'm sure there was a bit of reciprocity there. And that's what we do as PR folks. And that's, I mean, think about it. Reporters are human beings. And so if you have a reciprocal relationship where scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and it's to the benefit of both people and the industry, then that can only help your company. And that's what we do as PR folks all the time. And I think this is an interesting point that I'm going to make. I think a lot of people think that when they hire a PR agency, they are buying access. And yes, we have access. Yes, we have reporter friends. Yes, people will pick up the phone and answer our emails. Absolutely. But I can't make a reporter cover you. I can't force them to do anything. It's always going to be their choice. Like I can bring people to your house, right? But I can't make them walk in. You have to invite them in. They have to want to come in. The house has to be attractive enough for them to want to walk through the door, right? And so that's where the company, what you're doing, how you present yourself, how you message, um, and the types of announcements that you're putting out, that's what makes you attractive to a reporter to want to walk into the house and find out more about you. So it does help to write content. And if you're an early stage company, you maybe a lot of your exposure is going to be from providing uh, contributed content, is what we call it, and demonstrating your thought leadership, your unique perspectives on the market, until you can get to a place where you can provide more hard news. So, in terms of types of announcements, so now that we understand hard news and soft news, and we talked about what types of announcements fit into those categories, I want to show you how this equates to your customer journey and helping your customers helping you be sticky with them. So, eventually, every company is going to launch from stealth, right? That's where you start. It might be a hard launch, so big announcement, big dollar numbers, big investors. You know, you might be a big splash, or it might be small, and that's okay too. Um, Hold on, let's see here. Here we go. So, launching from stealth is just creating awareness. Now, if you combine that with a funding announcement, now you've hit 2 points on your customer journey: awareness and credibility. And then maybe your next piece is a partner collaboration, right? You're still trying to get customers, right? But you got a partner So now you've demonstrated validity. Somebody's interested in what you're doing and they've vetted you enough to want to work with you. You get two third parties who vetted you and said, yeah, this company is cool. We want to be in business with them. Now you get your customer acquisition, another piece of credibility. Maybe you get a second new customer and it opens up a new market. That's actually additional credibility and market awareness. Maybe in the next couple months, you put out a new product and then you validate that product in some way. So you've hit awareness and credibility again. As you're building your momentum, maybe you've got a new delivery to a customer or a ribbon cutting. That starts opening up a new section of this customer journey for you, your ability to deliver on the product you've been selling. Maybe a big brand takes notice. Well, that provides a lot of trustworthiness as well as awareness and credibility and viability because people recognize that brand and that brand's cachet transfers to you. And maybe you open up a production facility. So that's another one. Here's a few more follow-on orders. Again, trustworthiness. Maybe you do a sales roundup and what it means to the market. So we've delivered, 200 units in the past quarter. Or if you add up all of the energy storage devices that we've deployed, we've got, X number of megawatts, right? Adding up all this work into a concept that people can get their head around and shows that you're gaining market traction. Maybe you do a case study. So the results. We told you we made this product and it did this thing. This customer bought it. Now this customer is saying, yes, they were correct. We're getting the same results they predicted. Now, not every press announcement is weighted the same way. Remember how we talked about hard news and soft news? It's a continuum. Okay. So the items in yellow, that is high quality news, high news value. Because either it's a big brand, a brand name that people recognize, that gives you a lot of credibility, or the funding, or just launching from stealth being new, novel, unique, and groundbreaking. These are going to be high news value. So this is where you're going to get your mainstream tier one coverage. So we talked about the Bloombergs, TechCrunches of the world. Okay. Now, there's a couple of other logistical nuances that come along with getting those types of outlets on board and covering you. But at the end of the day, it starts with your content. And this is the type of content that those big outlets are looking for. Then you've got your blue items. This is your other items that are sort of called at a mid-tier news value. Okay. You can expect that your trade publications are going to cover this work and they're probably going to want to talk to you about it. The yellow ones, definitely you're going to have an interview about. The gray items are also really good for you to put out there. It's still decent news value, but a reporter might not need the time to sit down with you and interview you about it. They'll still cover it, but they might not need to sit down with you for a half hour and ask you a bunch of questions. So understand that getting an interview and getting a piece of news coverage don't always directly correlate. And just because sometimes companies will think, yeah, we got a lot of coverage, but nobody wanted to interview us. So they think so it wasn't successful, right? Well, that's not true. You got a bunch of coverage. Your news is out there. Maybe your press announcement was written in such a way that they didn't have any additional questions because you provided all that information, which actually saves the reporter time and they appreciate that. And they'll cover you again because of that. Getting an interview doesn't always mean you did a great job. Sometimes it means your press release is crap and a reporter needs to talk to you for 15 minutes to figure out what the heck this means. Any questions? I know that was a lot of information. All right. So moving on, here's a case study for you. Albio Technologies was the first company that we worked at with Technica that was acquired. We've had a couple others since then. But they went from obscurity to acquisition in 11 months. Now they came in, they started their PR program a bit late. I'd say, in their startup journey. They were already sort of a late stage Series C company, and they had a big customer list. They had been selling product and manufacturing product for years, but they never really talked about themselves. And they wanted to gain a bit more brand awareness because they had another series raise they wanted to do. They had some new product innovations in the pipeline that they wanted to pay for with that investment. And frankly, I think they wanted to get acquired. Okay, so we started working with them in January. By May, they had released, and so let me start over. Between January and May, what we did is we went through, we built up some messaging for them. They did do a small funding round, and then we went through their order book and we found the customers that were willing to talk about their purchasing of these industrial LED lights and talk about the results that they were getting from that. Not every company wanted to talk with them or talk about them, I should say. In fact, they had retrofitted all of the LED lighting, all of the lighting in all the Jaguar dealerships in Los Angeles. And they were very excited about that sale, and they were very excited to talk about it. But the Jaguar dealer did not want to talk about it because they were saving 30% of their energy costs, and they saw that as a competitive advantage. That was a story Albio could talk about. So we had to come up with other ones and we had to be creative. So we put a bunch of those case studies out and announced a few new customers, put a couple ribbon cuttings. And then by May, they had put out this dramatic new innovation. And then GE started watching them because this innovation was put out at the same time that there was a big industry conference, and GE was just a couple of booths away. And so they started walking by and surreptitiously watching and checking Albio out. By September, the company got kind of, I think they got wind of this, that they were being watched. They didn't know who it was, but they knew they were being watched. And so we all hustled to get this additional groundbreaking product out there in the world. It was called a chip and fixture product. And then that's when GE called Albio and said, okay, we can't ignore you anymore. Let's talk. And then by December, they were acquired. This is how your brand awareness can drive your sales and your business goals. Any questions?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, how is speaking at conferences, for example, how does that, is it hard news, soft news? Does it depend on what you talk about? The conference feels you're smart enough to talk there, or at least knowledgeable, maybe not smart. But but other than that, is it?
Well, it's funny you
how,
should
how do you see it?
ask that because the next workshop after this one is going to be specifically about how to maximize your brand exposure and your spend at conferences. So tune in for that. But I will say that if you're speaking at a conference or exhibiting, that's self-promotional information. Okay. So put it on your LinkedIn, put it on your website, put it in your, email signatures. Tell people about it, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not hard news. That's soft news. It's self-promotional. Now, if you're speaking on a panel and you have a white paper or a research paper or something more objective that you can release at the same time, now you're making it a bit more hard because you're providing additional information to the industry and you're not talking about yourself. I'm speaking on this panel. You're saying, here's some information, news you can use. And oh, by the way, I'll be talking about this at this panel. So come see me. And it's not about you, right? It's about the information.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess the next step is if there is a reporter that covers you and that's an interview right behind it, that may be a little bit better.
Yeah. Or if you have a reporter relationship and you know they're going to be at that conference, suggest that they come to your panel or, hey, I know you might be too busy at this time, but happy to meet up with you and share some of the insights from the panel. That's intriguing to a reporter because they're looking they need to cover the conference. And frankly, when you're a reporter and you're sent to a conference, you kind of feel like a deer in the headlights. You're like, I don't know. There's way too much information. I don't know how I'm going to cover this whole thing. And so you look to companies to sort of pave the way. And so you could say, hey, Bob, I'm going to be at this conference. I saw you're going to be there too. I'm sure you're super busy. I'm speaking here. If you're curious about what we cover, I can jump on a call with you afterwards. We can meet for coffee. I'll give you the lowdown on how it went.
Mhm.
That's news they
Yeah,
can use.
that works. Okay, appreciate it.
Again, it's not about you, it's about the information and giving back to the community.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right. And like I said, don't take my word for it. That's the whole theme of today's workshop. It's all about what third parties are going to say about you, not about what you say about yourself. And so Jeff Bisberg, he said 50% of the reason they got acquired was because of the PR work we did. And I thought that was really, really kind of him to say. All right. So you're all going to have some homework today. This is work that if you already are working with a PR team or a PR professional, they have probably already done this work for you in some fashion. But go ahead and take a screenshot of this, or you'll get a link to the video. This is what you want to work on. Think about, oops, I'm back. Think about what are the news announcements, past or present, that could bolster the messaging points that you have that are going to keep customers close to this customer journey with you. What news announcements could you put out there that create awareness, credibility, viability, deliverability, trustworthiness? What are some news items that are in the past that you could have announced that didn't? This is an important exercise, not to, give you like make you regret that you didn't announce anything, but it starts to get your mind working and understanding what's going to be valuable so that when that type of announcement is ready again, you'll notice it. Sometimes you can resurrect announcements that didn't get put out. Maybe you can find something new about that piece of company happening, traction, or milestone, and you can resurrect that item, usually in the form of a case study. Especially if you've been working with a customer for a couple of months, you know, or you're outside the pilot stage and now they're actually finally ordering from you, something like that. Then you have a new point in time where you can talk about that work together. Um,
Yeah,
Next,
can you spend like one more minute on resurrecting, because that's something that is very interesting for startups that they did something fantastic, but they're worried about the next thing and they never talked about it. And now,
yes,
hey, now it's 2 months later and it's not quite as timely, even though nobody heard about it. This would be the first time, but still, there's something else. There has to be a good way to make it fresh again,
yeah. Well,
since it wasn't there before.
right. Well, sometimes it just depends on how you phrase it. Um, Other times you put the announcement out that we did this thing, and here are the results of the last 2 months of operations.
Mhm.
Um, if it hasn't been announced, then nobody really knows about it, and it's something that's been running for a couple of months. Fine, you can still announce it as new because people aren't going to blame you for waiting a little bit because you can always put in some messaging in there around how you've been doing the testing or
Okay.
there's a term for a manufacturing plant that I'm not recalling right now. Readiness, I think, is the
Yes.
term. Yeah,
Everything in technologies, technical readiness levels.
exactly, exactly. So if there's a bit of time that's passed between, the final bolt on and the news announcement, that's fine. Frankly, a lot of companies wait a year to make any of their first funding announcements. And so sometimes the first announcement we do with a client when they get started with Technica is resurrecting that funding announcement that they didn't make and connecting it to something new. Sometimes it's like another piece of funding, or maybe they got a grant. And so you can combine those two things together for a larger dollar number. And you don't necessarily have to get into too much of the weeds around timing. Nobody really cares. Like you earned that money, right? It doesn't really matter how it came in and how it came about because it's not necessarily that reporters are going to talk about you raising the funds, What they're going to talk about is you as a company and what you're doing and the problem that you're solving. And oh, by the way, the news hook is that they raise money, and that gives them validity and credibility. Look at your next 12 months. What are the messaging points that you need to bolster to keep your sales funnel going? And what are some news items that you can put out that would support those? Finally, which of these ideas have a timing that might coincide with a conference? The reason I put this here is because number one, conferences where media are in attendance, because not every conference is able to attract media, but the big ones will. Okay, Expo, where I'm going to be next week, lots of media. Um, uh, RE Plus, again, big conference, a lot of reporters go there. So you want to make sure that you have at least something of value that you can take to reporters during these times if you're exhibiting or going to be at the conference, because this is your opportunity to meet these people in person, build a deeper relationship with them beyond just a quick phone call. Number one. Number two, if this requires third party participation, that is a hard deadline that you can leverage to get a deal done. Actually, Val Miftikoff over at Zero Avia, who we worked with for several years, he actually also was the CEO of eMotorworks, which worked with them until they were bought by an L. Um, he is he's deft at making that connection. And now it gives a PR person complete heartburn because you've worked on a press announcement and you have no idea until the literally 11th hour, 11 o'clock or midnight, the day before the announcement goes to go out, is this deal done or not? And you finally get the go ahead, yes, it's done. And they're on a panel together the next day and they can talk about the news. Right. Very clever negotiating tactic. I don't recommend doing that for every news announcement because you're going to burn out your PR team, but it can be very effective for big ones. All right. The last thing we're going to talk about today is bring your own customer. And here, what we're talking about is basically it's a media model. And you've heard this theme, third party, get others talking about you. There are certain outlets that will not cover your news unless it is through the lens of the customer. The built environment is very much like this, and the utility space is very much like this. So back to the hard news section, funding, third-party research, case studies, new customers, strategic partners. What's the theme here? These all require third parties. These all require customers, somebody willing to speak about you on your behalf. Gives credibility. It's often required for media coverage, like I said. You should definitely make sure that your customers are willing to talk to press if they're going to be involved in a news announcement. You can have some good brand alignment, and especially for items like product expansion, market expansion, moving into a new country, a new facility or office, you really have to make that announcement with a customer, and then it's going to make it relevant. I'm moving a little faster because I know we're short on time. Thank you for staying for those of you who can. Key to making sure that you can use your customers in your press, start the discussion early. Make a casual comment during one of your meetings. Oh, this is going to make a great press announcement. People are going to love this. Get so much coverage for this. And their response to you in that casual comment is going to tell you everything you need to know about their appetite for participating in a press announcement. I recommend all of our clients put a clause in the contracts saying that you are going to be allowed to release this relationship to the public. Now, sometimes that becomes a negotiating chip, and sometimes it gets pulled out of the contract, but put it in there. Also, a lot of customers or third parties are going to want to diminish the news quality by removing key facts, making it more vague, or putting marketing speak in. So you're going to have to defend your news by making sure that stuff doesn't get put into the announcement. And your PR team should be able to help you with that as well. And then, of course, celebrate and amplify this and collaborate with each other on how you're going to put the news out there so that everybody gets the exposure. Because at the end of the day, the champion at that company who helped bring you in, they're going to get a tremendous amount of a personal brand lift within the company if you do this right, and that only connects them closer to the success of your company. And when you do that, you get your big brand awareness realized. People recognize your company or your logo, and they have a sense of what you do when they meet you. The reasons that they're buying match the messages and the information you're putting out there. The news that you get is sort of parroting your messages. And then, of course, social media promotes you organically. That's all the stuff we covered today. I hope it was useful for you. The next workshop we're going to do, like I said, is about maximizing exposure at conferences. That'll be on June 20. You're going to get an email with a link to this video. And in that link, you'll also have something where you can register for the next workshop.